So finally, all 135 cards from United and Stormwind have been revealed. I have reviewed about a third of them already, but I'll go over the new ones and briefly give updated thoughts on the ones I've touched on already, if I feel it's necessary. So starting with Demon Hunter, we have the quest line Final Showdown. The quest line is draw 4 cards in one turn, reward reduce the cost of the cards drawn by 1. And then we have draw 5 cards in one turn, reduce the cost of the cards drawn by 1. Finally, draw 5 cards in one turn to get Demon Slayer Kurtrus. And Demon Slayer Kurtrus is a 5 mana 7/7 with Battle Cry. For the rest of the game, card you draw cost 2 less. So my first impression of this card is that it's like kind of hard to use. Drawing 4 cards in one turn is not that easy. And compared to some of the other quest lines, it does seem like you're going to have to wait several turns to even start working on this, because there's no way you can draw 4 cards in one turn on turn 2 or turn 3, right? I think the earliest you can really do it is going to be with like Glide on turn 4. Maybe something silly with Acrobatics and Wisp on turn 3, but seems pretty hard to activate even the first part of the quest line in the early game. So yeah, seems a little bit hard to activate, seems a little bit slow. Demon Hunter already has access to Skull of Gul'dan, which seems like it kinda just does this effect, but better. So, yeah, not too impressed with the Demon Hunter questline at first sight. Next up we have Metamorphin. 1 mana 1/2 Murloc with Taunt. Battlecry, if you've cast a Fel spell this turn, gain +2/+2. I think this might be the first Murloc with Taunt outside of Circus Amalgam, which is interesting, I guess. As far as Fel spells go, I checked them when I was reviewing Jace, and they were like kind of fine, kind of mediocre. We did get a couple new ones in this expansion, but they're not really that exciting. So, I mean, I can't say I love this card. I don't think it's that easy to cast a Fel spell with it. But if you do happen to actually cast the Fel spell, then, you know, 1 mana 3/4 with Taunt is pretty good. I just don't really know what deck you put this in. And, like, it's not worth building around, just playing extra Fel spells for it. I mean, I guess if the Jace deck takes off, then you probably do just play this card in that deck, and then you can play, maybe as early as turn 2, I-Beam plus this. Pretty sure I-Beam is a Fel spell. So, like, that's fine, but I don't know, I just don't really see the deck for it. It seems so random that this card is a Murloc, and that it has Taunt. But, yeah, not too excited for this one. Sigil of Alacrity, which means brisk and cheerful readiness. 1 mana shadow spell, at the start of your next turn, draw a card and reduce its cost by 1. So I think the intent of this card is to help out with the quest line, because it draws a card on the following turn, so you can set up to draw 4 cards in that turn potentially. This does actually mean that you can like play this on turn 2, and then turn 3 with this, your normal draw, and Acrobatics. You can actually finish the first part of the quest line, which seems fine, I guess. I still don't really love the quest line, but this card itself seems pretty good to me. It's kind of like the what are they called? Every class has one, the studies cards. 1 mana, discover something and discount it by 1, or discount things like it by 1. This is similar to that, it's just like a filler card you throw out, but it draws a card from your deck and reduces its cost by 1. Cards in your deck tend to be better than things you discover, so seems like it could just be a pretty good filler card. I don't know how many decks really have room to play it, but the Lifesteal OTK deck could probably use some card draw, and if they hit a good 1 mana discount with this, that can be really impactful. So yeah, I mean, this card just seems pretty solid. And obviously, if the quest line takes off, you certainly play this card. Next we have Fel Barrage, which is a 2 mana Fel spell. Deal 2 damage to the lowest health enemy twice. So it's basically like Cleave, right? That warrior spell that never really saw any play. But I don't know, it seems pretty reasonable. It's a lot more targeted than Cleave. One of the sad things with Cleave is they've like 3 things that this can kill and 1 big minion and you haven't hit the big minion, but this can shoot the 2 smaller ones. Or if the opponent just has like 1 4/4, then this can just kill the 4/4. So that's like pretty solid, I would say. And this can go face, I assume, right? If your opponent is weaker than all of their minions. That seems like a pretty rare scenario, but I guess when you have other burn in your deck, you can just use this as the finisher. That way, if your opponent's at like 9, you can just burn them until they're lower than their minion and then finish them with Fel Barrage. So that could be pretty good. It's also just like a pretty solid removal spell. I do feel like, as Demon Hunter, if you want to be dealing damage to a minion, you've already got like Eye Beam, you've got Immolation Aura. So I'm not like super in love with this card, but it's definitely fine. Depending on the meta, maybe it just happens to hit the right breakpoints, but I don't love it. Next up we have Chaos Leech, another Fel spell for Demon Hunter. 3 mana with Lifesteal, deal 3 damage to a minion, outcast, deal 5 instead. So this card to me pretty much just seems outclassed by Eye Beam. Eye Beam is 1 mana, deal 3 to a minion with Lifesteal. Obviously if you can outcast this, it's better. But if you're outcasting, I mean, Eye Beam is still arguably better because it costs 1 mana instead of 3. I just think Eye Beam is a little bit more, it's just a little bit simpler to use. So yeah, don't really love this card, but maybe you play both? Next we have Lion's Frenzy, a Demon Hunter weapon. 3 mana 0/2, has attack equal to the number of cards you've drawn this turn. So obviously synergizes with the same things that the quest line synergizes with. I think this is... No, this is not quite the last synergy card that it got. But, so you're going to draw 1 card for your turn normally, right? And then if you play, like, Acrobatics or Spectral Sight or something, then maybe this can get up to being, like, a 3/2 weapon. Seems pretty underwhelming. I guess if you play Glide with it, then it's a 5/2 weapon. That's, like, pretty good. But, I mean, Demon Hunter has other weapons. Just seems a bit underwhelming to me. Really not in love with this archetype so far. Next we have Fel Gorger, 4 mana 4/3 demon with Battle Cry. Draw a Fel spell, reduce its cost by 2. So, I mean, this card is like fine. 4 mana 4/3, draw a card, reduce its cost by 2. Seems quite solid. But Demon Hunter's really good at drawing cards. I don't know that this is necessarily going to be worth including over their more efficient options like Skull of Gul'dan and even like Spectral Sight. They have a lot of card draw. I don't know if I'm too impressed with this. And it does only draw Fel spells. We did get a couple new ones that are like fine. But as far as big ones that would really abuse this, I mean, it's nice if you hit like Chaos Nova, I guess. But in general, I think this effect seems pretty underwhelming. I think if Demon Hunter wants to draw cards, they can probably do better than this. Next we have Persistent Peddler. I don't think we really got anything that would change my opinion on this card. Seems like it's probably just pretty good. Tradable's a good keyword. The tradable means you always have the second Peddler in your deck, almost always. And it's just a high-rolled piloted shredder that can sometimes be traded, so seems good, especially in Death Rattle Demon Hunter. Next up we have Irebound Brute, 7 mana 6/7 demon with taunt. Costs 1 less for each card drawn this turn. So because you're drawing a card for your turn naturally, this is basically a 6 mana 6/7 with taunt. And then you play Skull of Gul'dan, and then it's a 3 mana 6/7 with taunt. I think this is definitely the most playable of the cards that want you to be drawing cards on your turn, because you can just kind of throw it in a deck. And you don't have to try too hard to use it, I would say. But it's kind of hard to imagine it really making the cut. Demon Hunter decks are very synergy based at the moment, either with Death Rattle stuff or being an OTK deck. So I think it's kind of hard to imagine finding a home for this card. But again, if I'm underestimating the quest line, then obviously this is a consideration for that, right? And then finally we got Jace Darkweaver. I did review this one already, but 8 mana 7/5 Battlecry, cast all Fel spells. You've played this game, targets enemies if possible. So I said before, I think this card is like pretty reasonable. It's like compared to Shudderwalk or Zul'jin or whatever. But at the time, I didn't think we really had the appropriate pool of cards to support this. And with the 2 new Fel spells we got, I think my opinion on that hasn't really changed. We got Fel Barrage and Chaos Leech. Fel Barrage is like pretty playable, and it's like pretty good with Jace. It's even one of the things about Jace is you can hit like Fury or Metamorphosis and just deal a bunch of damage, and potentially Fel Barrage can help with that. And you can also be clearing the board so your opponent doesn't have any minions, and therefore their hero will be the weakest enemy. So like maybe Fel Barrage makes this into a pretty consistent finisher, but I think you just play Illidari Inquisitor. I don't see much reason to build around this. Moving on to Druid, we've got Lost in the Park, the quest line that I've reviewed, and I don't think this really got any more support since I last reviewed it. So yeah, I guess I'll just reiterate that it has like a decent number of support cards, but it kind of seems like it's probably not enough. And it seems like the reward is just a little bit awkward, like gaining health on your hero and you're just getting armor, so it's just kind of like offsetting things. And all this armor that you're gaining, and then your final payoff is something that does 8 damage. Just seems a little bit underwhelming. Next we have Sow the Soil, 1 mana nature spell with choose 1, give your minions +1 attack, or summon a 2/2 Treant. So we saw Tree Enforcements, which was similar to this. It was also 1 mana, and one of the options was summon a 2/2 Treant. But I think the other choose 1 effect on this card is better. Giving all your minions +1 attack can be really strong in a token deck. So yeah, I mean, I think this card is just pretty good. That's just a powerful effect when you're playing Gibberling or Glowfly Swarm or whatever. My only real reservation about this card is that once you have that many minions in play in Druid, maybe you'd prefer to just be making an Arbor Up play, or they got a new they got Composting, which we're going to see in a minute, or, you know, Pride's Fury. Maybe this just isn't like what you want to be doing with that board, but it's also just like 1 mana spell, add some lethality to your deck. I think it's just a pretty good card. Kind of hard to imagine Token Druid not playing it. It's also just a good spell to play with Gibberling. Next we have Vibrant Squirrel, 1 mana 2/1 beast with Death Rattle. Shuffle 4 acorns into your deck. When drawn, summon a 2/1 squirrel. So I actually don't really love this card because we did see the warrior minion. It was like Remote Control Golem, I think it was called, that shuffles 2/1s into your deck. And what I said with that card was basically, like, you're getting the 2/1s later in the game, and like the later in the game you go, the less impactful a 2/1 is, and like at a certain point it just doesn't really matter at all. But this does come down a little bit earlier, and I think the more important thing is that Druid has Arbor Up. So the thing about Arbor Up is when you're playing Druid, you're just always looking for an opportunity to abuse it, and a lot of times you're like 1 minion off from really getting enough value out of it. So this can just like, it just throws a minion on your board for free, and then suddenly your Arbor Up is nutty, right? So I think that's like the main utility of this card. I think in a vacuum, it's actually not that great. It's just a little bit slow, and as I said, 2/1s in the late game aren't super good. But it is quite good with Arbor Up. I actually still don't know that it makes the cut in a Gibberling deck, though, because it interferes with the draw spell, Fungal Fortunes. But it's definitely a reasonable card. I don't think it's insane, though. Next we have Composting, which I referenced a minute ago. This is a 2 mana nature spell with give your minions Death Rattle, draw a card. So obviously for Druid, we've seen like Soul of the Forest, which is 4 mana, give your things Death Rattle, make another thing. This lets you draw cards. It's certainly theoretically a very strong card. I mean, you play it on your Gibberling board, you just dump your whole hand and make a bunch of Gibberlings, and then your board draws 6 or 7 cards. That's like pretty good, right? Or you play it to back up your Glowfly Swarm or whatever. My only problem with this card is generally when you're going for those big explosive token druid boards, I feel like most of the time you're just kind of committing all of your mana to actually making the board and then playing like a, a Power of the Wild, an Arbor Up, a Pride's Fury, something like that so that your board just doesn't get cleared in the first place. I think you would much rather be doing that than drawing cards. And like if you go all in with, Gibberling, Power of the Wild, Arbor Up, all that stuff, like at a certain point, even if you draw 6 cards, you're not going to be able to make another board like that. So in that sense, I think this card is maybe a little bit underwhelming. But at the end of the day, it's like 2 mana, very consistently draws like 2 cards. Sometimes it draws 7. It's probably a good card, but I think it is a little bit awkward, and it's in a class that already has access to, you can already play Guess the Weight, you can already play Fungal Fortunes. So, I mean, maybe this like replaces Fungal Fortunes, and then you're more likely to play the Squirrel that we just looked at. That could definitely be a thing. But I think the card is maybe a little bit more awkward than it looks at first glance. Next we have Wickerclaw, 2 mana 1/4 beast. After your hero gains attack, this minion gains +2 attack, and the buff on this minion is permanent. So this is like kind of synergy with the quest line, but it doesn't, it's more like synergy with the cards that synergize with the quest line, not a direct synergy, right? I mean, this is a pretty solid minion. 2 mana 1/4 is already like an okay stat line, and then if you just play like Pounce with this, then suddenly it's a 2 mana 3/4. That's very good, right? And you can do that as early as turn 2 or even turn 1 with Pounce, right? So pretty solid minion. But I'm not really sure if this is like what the questline druid wants to be doing. I mean, you're playing like Moontouched Amulet and maybe Feral Rage. I don't know if you're really like curving out with that deck. And your reward is like gaining armor, so do you just want some small minion to play in the early game? I don't know, it just seems kind of weird. And I don't think we got anything new that buffs this card. So, I don't know. You probably do just play it in the questline deck, but I'm not too impressed with the archetype at the moment. Oracle of Elune we have seen already. I don't think I'm too impressed with any of the new cards synergizing with this. Definitely don't really care to be playing the Squirrel with it. Yeah, I mean, maybe someone will figure out how to break this card, but that someone's not going to be me. I think it's a combo card that currently doesn't really have much of a home. Kodo Mount. When I reviewed this initially, I just compared it to Blessing of Kings, but I think it's better than Blessing of Kings. It's just more stats. I don't think you care too much about the rush on the front end, but the rush on the back end is pretty good. I guess I can just say I don't really know. Like, my original biggest complaint with this card was where do you actually play it at? And I don't know that they've necessarily shown me where this card sees play. I still don't think you play it in Token Druid, although it is pretty good with the Squirrel, right? You just get a random 2/1 on some turn and you just give it rush and make it their 2/1, so you make it a 6/3. It is quite good with the Squirrel. Maybe that could be a place where this sees play, but I don't think you necessarily play this in the questline deck. I don't think you play it in any existing Druid decks. So good card that might end up seeing no play. Park Panther, we saw this one already, but it is questline support. Not in love with the questline at the moment. But the card is definitely powerful. Maybe it makes the cut in a Guardian Animals deck, depending on the meta, depending on the appropriate package of animals. But I think at the moment I don't love it. And then again, we saw Best in Shell already. 6 mana tradable, summon 2/7 turtles with taunt. I think this card's just good. It's particularly good with Solar Eclipse. It's got tradable, so it's a good card. Seems like a good card. Not sure necessarily where it finds a home, but it's probably good enough in Token Druid, I would imagine. And then Sheldras Moontree, 8 mana 5/5, Battle Cry. The next 3 spells you cast, the next 3 spells you draw are cast when drawn. Yeah, still, I think the card's just a bit too expensive, and they didn't really add any spells that look too impressive with this guy. So moving on to Hunter, we've got Devouring Swarm. 0 mana, choose an enemy minion, your minions attack it, then return any that die to your hand. So, I mean, this just seems like a pretty solid card, right? If you're an aggressive deck, you can send all your minions face and then use your board to kill something. You can use, it's like a removal and a reload a bit. One potentially really good synergy with this card is you turn 1 Wolpertanger, and then your opponent plays like anything with 2 health. You Devouring Swarm your Wolpertanger, then you have 2 Wolpertangers in hand. You play them both and have 4 Wolpertangers, right? So that's a pretty good synergy with it. It's also good with Rat King because, you know, Rat King wants you to have minions to die, and this lets you basically kill your minions twice, so it's good with that. Potentially pretty good with the rats of extraordinary size that you're going to be summoning. It just seems solid. It's also, yeah, I guess it's also an egg activator. That's always nice. 0 mana spell, so good with Lock and Load, good with Kolkar Pack Runner. Good card. I like this a lot. I think it can go in a lot of different Hunter decks, maybe even just Face Hunter. And I guess you can, you force your minion to attack, so you can like double dip with Trampling Rhino. Seems nice. Next up, the Hunter questline, Defend the Dwarven District. So questline is deal damage with 2 spells, reward your hero power can target minions, and then you deal damage with 2 spells, set the cost of your hero power to 0, and then finally deal damage with 2 spells, you get Tavish, Master Marksman, and Tavish is a 5 mana 7/7 with Battle Cry. For the rest of the game, spells you cast refresh your hero power. So, if you're keeping up with all that, your hero power can target minions, it costs 0, and it gets refreshed whenever you play a spell. So Hunter is the new Shadow Reaper Anduin Raza the Chained deck. You get the 0 mana hero power that you keep refreshing, and you clear boards or clear faces with it. So, yeah, I mean, we know Raza Priest was a good deck, right? So this effect in Hunter is probably even better because Hunter is more aggressive and can deal more damage. The only question is, how easy is it to deal damage with spells? Well, we've got Arcane Shot, Overwhelm, Wound Prey, Bola Shot, I guess Explosive Trap, Quick Shot, Aimed Shot is a new card we're going to see, Piercing Shot, Scrap Shot, a lot of cards that say shot in them. But yeah, I mean, it seems like Hunter has a lot of ways to deal damage with spells. The overall requirement of dealing damage with 6 spells is maybe going to be a little bit steep. But honestly, even if you just complete this twice, then you have a 0 mana hero power that can target minions. Like, you don't necessarily have to get all the way up to Tavish, right? So, like, maybe you just slap this in your aggro deck, and sometimes you get a 0 mana hero power for it. I don't know how worth it that really is, because, like, current Face Hunter decks I don't think are too worried about mana. But you can certainly adjust your deck in a way such that this would be pretty useful. And you can just full-on build around it, play like Lock and Load, and then every spell you cast does 2 damage to face or 2 damage to a minion. I mean, it seems easy enough to activate, and we know how good this is from Raza Priest, so it seems like this is just a good card. I'd be surprised if it ends up being bad. But it might also just be better to play straight up Face Hunter and kill people with rhinos. Next we have Leatherworking Kit. 2 mana 0/3 weapon. After 3 friendly beasts die, draw a beast and give it +1/+1. I mean, seems... and lose 1 durability, of course. I mean, it seems pretty good. I guess you play it in the Rat King deck because that wants to have a lot of little beasts. This is effectively 2 mana, draw 3 cards, and you get to give all those beasts +1/+1. Seems pretty good for that deck. One of the flaws with that deck might just be running out of cards, because you have so many like little tokeny things that can get cleared and you're just trying to abuse your Rat Kings. Depending on how that deck is built, this also helps you draw into Jewel of N'Zoth. So, seems pretty good. It does take up a weapon slot, which is maybe relevant in Hunter. Renling's Rifle is a really good card. And then even like True Aim Crescent's pretty good as well. But seems reasonable. Having 3 friendly beasts die seems like a pretty easy requirement to meet. Even in like Face Hunter, maybe it wouldn't be that hard to meet this condition. I guess the real abuse case with this is Kolkar Packrunner, right? You could theoretically just make 9 friendly beasts with that card and then set off the entire Leatherworking Kit. But I think it's probably a bit too slow for Face Hunter. Makes a lot of sense in the Rat King deck. Solid card. Next we have Aimed Shot. 3 mana, deal 3 damage. Your next hero power deals 2 more damage. So 3 mana, deal 5 damage in Hunter. I think we've seen that card before, and I think it was pretty good. This is in some ways more, in some ways less flexible. Supports the quest. Seems like it's just a good card. Probably play it in Face Hunter even. I mean, Piercing Shot is a really sketchy card, and Piercing Shot saw plenty of play. This card actually might end up being, like, too good. And then we have Ramming Mount. We have seen this one already. But 3 mana, give a minion +2/+2 and immune while attacking. When it dies, summon a ram. The ram is, it's a 2/2 with immune when attacking. Seems like a fine card. I don't think you play it in Face Hunter. I don't necessarily know that you play this in the Rat King deck. I think you'd rather... Like, this does summon a minion. I think you would probably rather be doing more tokeny stuff. I don't think this goes in the Questline deck. Seems like a solid card that might not have a home, but if it ends up seeing play, I wouldn't be too shocked. One of the big things I said about this when I first reviewed it was that it's a 3 mana spell that you can draw off Barak. But we got a better one of those with Aim Shot. Wow, Aim Shot is a good card. But yeah, I thought, early on I thought this card might see play because of Barak, but now that we've seen Aim Shot, probably not. Next we have Stormwind Piper, which the art on this looks exactly like Witchwood Piper, but that's okay. 3 mana 1/6 Demon. After this minion attacks, give your beasts +1/+1. 3 mana 1/6 is a pretty tough stat line. We've seen Magic Carpet. We've seen the Druid minion Crypt Lord. I think it was Crypt Lord, something like that. But yeah, 3 mana 1/6 is a pretty tough stat line. But this doesn't do anything until the turn after you play it. Or I guess it does have synergy with Devouring Swarm, synergy with True Aim Crescent. But you do need some sort of activator for this, or to wait a turn to give your beasts +1/+1. But it's pretty easy to have a lot of random beasts in play, and if you do get to attack with this, then it does look pretty nice. I did mention Devouring Swarm and True Aim Crescent, but the problem with those is that they make your minions attack in the order they were played. So generally, I think with this kind of effect, you would want to have a bunch of beasts, and then play your Stormwind Piper and buff everything. But all your stuff is going to die if you use True Aim Crescent or Devouring Swarm, so that's a little bit sketchy. Seems like an okay card. It is a 3 mana 1/6. You probably just jam it in your Rat King deck, because that deck is going to be making so many tokens, I would imagine. But maybe just a bit unreliable and not quite worth the deck slot. Next we have Rodent Nest. 4 mana 2/2 with Death Rattle, summon 5 1/1 rats. 4 mana 7/7, let's go. I mean, it just seems, it's definitely a slow card, 4 mana 2/2, but that is a lot of stats on a 4 mana card. I think you're probably not going to be playing this in Face Hunter, it's just a little bit too slow, probably don't play it in the Questline deck, but it seems like a good card for the Rat King. And it's definitely good with Stormwind Piper. Imported Tarantula, we saw this one already, but 5 mana 4/5 beast with tradable. Death Rattle, summon 2 1/1 spiders with Poisonous and Rush. Good with Guardian Animals. I guess it's maybe good with Rat King. Probably doesn't make too much sense in the Questline deck, too slow for aggro. Solid card, may or may not find a home, but pretty good with Jewel of N'Zoth and Guardian Animals. I mean, I guess maybe you're just playing Guardian Animals in the Rat King deck anyway, right? Because you want to find the Rat King. So yeah, this probably does go in that deck. And speaking of the Rat King, we have seen him already, but 5 mana 5/5 Beast with Rush, Death Rattle, go Dormant, revive after 5 friendly minions die. I already kind of liked this card, but we got a new support card with Rodent Nest, and even Devouring Swarm looks pretty good in this deck. So yeah, seems pretty good. Don't know if it'll be the best Hunter deck, but seems pretty solid. And a similar feeling on Rats of Extraordinary Size, 6 mana summon 7/1/1 rats. Any that can't fit on the battlefield go to your hand with +4/+4. I will say that Rodent Nest does make this card look a little bit better. Makes it pretty easy to fill your board and then fill your hand with 1 mana 5/5s. But yeah, I mean, good support with Rat King. Pretty good with the Leatherworking Kit if you're going for that. Seems solid. I will say, though, that Rat King Hunter looks a little bit less impressive to me now that I've seen Questline Hunter, because that seems like a good deck.